When the truth finally shattered my world, I didn't seek revenge. I sought justice. My name is Clark Campbell, and I'm 33 years old. I run a small contracting business from the starter home I renovated myself, sharing weekend dinners with my mother, Myrna, who taught me the value of patience and principles. I believed my marriage was built on trust and honesty until I discovered the calculated deception hiding behind every smile, every explanation, every reassurance. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was methodical, planned with precision that made my contractor's mind recognize its architectural nature. My response wasn't to rage or break. Instead, I gathered evidence with the same careful attention I give to building foundations. Anyone who's faced betrayal knows that raw burn in your chest when you must stay composed while your world crumbles. But let me start from the beginning. The first crack in my marriage appeared in the cloud, of all places. I was backing up project photos when thumbnails I didn't recognize caught my eye. Hotel bathroom mirrors reflecting someone's phone, a man's shadow stretched across unfamiliar sheets, and my wife's distinctive silver bracelet, the one I'd given her for our 3rd anniversary, dangling from a wrist in several shots. My hands stayed steady as I opened our shared banking app. There they were, rideshare receipts, twice a week, always to the same address across town. The trips lined up perfectly with her late meetings and sister visits. The careful timing of it all made my stomach clench. Remember that feeling when you first spot a wall that's not quite plumb? That's how the truth hit me. Something was fundamentally off, and no amount of decorative trim could hide it. I printed everything: the photos, bank statements, rideshare records. Each page went into a fresh manila folder, arranged chronologically the way I catalog my building permits. The kitchen table, solid oak that I'd restored myself last summer, running my hands over every grain, became my workbench for a different kind of project. The familiar scent of lemon furniture polish hung in the air as Barbara walked in that evening. "We need to talk," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. She sat down, her perfect smile faltering as she noticed the folder. "These are facts," I told her, laying out the evidence one piece at a time. "I'm not here to yell. I'm here to set boundaries." My voice stayed level, though my chest felt like I'd inhaled sawdust. Barbara's eyes narrowed as she scanned the documents. "You're being paranoid," she said, pushing the photos away. "Those ride charges, work things, team meetings." She paused, her tone shifting to something softer, practiced. "Maybe if you weren't so cold lately." The manipulation was as obvious as a crooked doorframe. "I've already frozen our joint accounts," I replied. "Passwords are changed. We're separating tonight." That's when her mask slipped. The concerned wife vanished, replaced by something calculating. Her lips curved into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "Can you prove anything that matters in court?" My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. The way she jumped straight to legal threats told me everything. This wasn't just about infidelity. There was something deeper, more deliberate at play. I needed help from someone who knew how to navigate these waters. Leo. My cousin would know exactly what steps to take next. "I don't need to prove anything right now," I said, gathering the documents back into their folder. "I just needed to know who you really are." The evening air had turned crisp as I pulled into Leo's law office parking lot. Most of the windows were dark except for his corner office on the 3rd floor. That's Leo, always burning the midnight oil. The security guard nodded as I passed, probably used to Leo's after-hours consultations. My cousin's face turned grave as I spread the evidence across his mahogany desk. The photos, the bank statements, everything laid out under his desk lamp like pieces of a puzzle I wished I'd never had to solve. Remember those weekend fishing trips where Leo would teach me to read the water? This felt like that, only now we were tracking something far more dangerous than base. "She's testing limits," Leo said, studying the rideshare patterns. His fingers drummed once on the desk, a habit from our childhood when he was thinking hard. "The regular schedule, the consistent location. Clark, this isn't impulsive. It's methodical." The word hit like a hammer blow. Methodical, like measuring twice before cutting, like checking your levels before pouring concrete. My wife had approached betrayal the way I approached building, with careful planning. "We need to move fast," Leo continued, reaching for his computer. "Legal separation first, then fraud alerts on everything." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Credit bureaus, banks, investment accounts. We lock it all down tonight." The next hour passed in a blur of electronic forms and notarized documents. Each signature felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. The office grew darker until only Leo's desk lamp illuminated the papers that would begin dismantling my life. My hand shook slightly as I signed the last document. Leo noticed but didn't comment, just squeezed my shoulder the way he used to when we were kids and I'd scraped a knee. Morning came too quickly. I stood in my driveway, arms crossed, watching Barbara wheel her suitcase toward me. The early sun caught her wedding ring, another thing that had turned out to be false advertising. "You're overreacting," she whispered, leaning close. Her perfume, the same scent I'd given her last Christmas, drifted between us. "We could fix this if you'd just drop the drama." Her voice was honey smooth, practiced, the same tone she'd used when convincing me to add her name to the house deed. I kept my arms folded and stepped back. The rideshare driver loaded her bags while Barbara watched me with that same calculated smile. As the car pulled away, the weight of everything crashed over me. 6 years of marriage, countless shared dreams, all the trust I'd invested, gone like sawdust in the wind. But I couldn't afford to drown in those feelings. Not now. Evidence before emotion. That's what Leo had drummed into me last night. Back at my desk, I pulled up the mortgage portal, determined to catalog every account we shared. That's when I saw it. My cursor hovered over a notification I'd somehow missed. Home equity line of credit, pending activation. I clicked through, my throat tightening. There it was, a loan application for nearly the full value of my house. And at the bottom, a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. My hands started shaking as I stared at the forgery, already uploaded and waiting for final processing. My hands were already dialing Leo's number before the shock fully registered. "I need you to see this," I said when he picked up. "Someone's trying to drain my house equity with a forged signature." Within an hour, I sat across from Michael Grant, the bank's lead investigator. His office felt too small for the weight of what we were discussing. He adjusted his glasses, studying the loan documentation on his monitor. "The electronic notary stamp is legitimate," Michael said, "but it wasn't used properly." He pulled up branch security footage. This was processed last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. at our Riverdale branch. The timestamp matched perfectly with when Barbara told me she was having lunch with her sister. My stomach clenched as I watched the footage. There she was, in the same blue blazer she'd worn to dinner that night, leaning over a desk with a bank officer. The casual confidence in her posture made me sick. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was planned. "We take identity theft seriously," Michael continued, printing copies of the transaction records. "Especially when it involves mortgage fraud." I remembered Jake, my site foreman, mentioning he'd done some camera installations at that branch. "Mind if I make a call?" I asked. Michael nodded. Jake picked up on the second ring. "Those branch cameras we installed last month. Can you verify the photo metadata for me?" I could hear him typing. "Yeah, here it is. Full installation specs, timestamps, everything's logged in the system." The timeline was damning. Barbara's bank visit, her lies about being with her sister, the forged documents. It all lined up perfectly. My hands stayed steady as I took notes, but inside, my chest felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. That evening, I initiated the transfer of my business funds into a protected trust account Leo had set up. The paperwork to halt the fraudulent credit line went out by certified mail. Each signature felt like another brick in the wall between my old life and whatever came next. I was reviewing the bank records again when Barbara showed up unannounced. The tears came first, right on cue. "Remember our first apartment?" she whispered, perching on the edge of my desk. "How we ate dinner on moving boxes because we couldn't afford furniture?" When that didn't work, her voice hardened. "You're ruining our life with all these spreadsheets and accusations." She grabbed at the papers on my desk. "Why can't you just trust me?" I kept my voice level, even as my pulse quickened. "Trust requires honesty, Barbara. Where's your other phone?" "What other phone?" "You're being paranoid again." But her hand twitched toward her purse. Later that night, as I walked through the darkened living room, the smart speaker suddenly lit up. "New device nearby," it announced cheerfully. "Would you like to connect to Princess B?" I froze. Princess B, her childhood nickname, the one her parents still used, the one she'd sworn only family knew about. The speaker's blue light pulsed in the darkness, like a beacon pointing toward more lies waiting to be uncovered. The smart speaker's blue light haunted me all night. By sunrise, I was already dressed and heading to the driveway where Barbara's old Civic sat collecting dust. She'd barely driven it since getting her new car 6 months ago, claiming the stick shift hurt her knee. Now I wondered what else that excuse had hidden. The morning air bit through my jacket as I opened the driver's door. That new car smell had long faded, replaced by the musty scent of neglect. I remembered teaching her to drive manual in this car, her laughter when she finally mastered the clutch. The memory tasted bitter now. The glove box opened with a familiar click. There, beneath expired insurance cards and crumpled receipts, lay a slim black phone. My hands didn't shake as I picked it up. They never did when I was processing evidence instead of emotion. The screen lit up without a passcode. Barbara had always been careless with security, convinced her charm could cover any mistake. I opened her messages, and the truth spilled out in blue and gray bubbles. Points converted. $750 cash coming through. Used his SSN for the pull. Clean score, Chiors, green light. Plan B cosigner ready if needed. He's good for it. Each screenshot told its own story. Credit card statements, application confirmations, all with my name, all opened months ago. They'd been careful, making minimum payments to keep the accounts just under my radar. Professional, calculated, like thieves testing locks before the real break-in. Then I saw my mother's name, Myrna Campbell, authorized user, on a card I never knew existed. My chest compressed. Mom, who'd taught me about honest work and clean books, who still balanced her checkbook by hand and paid cash for groceries. They'd tied her credit to their scheme without a second thought. I remembered Sunday dinners at her house, Barbara complimenting Mom's careful budgeting while knowing this poison was spreading through our family's finances. The betrayal felt physical, like concrete setting in my gut. The phone's screen dimmed as I sat there, the steering wheel cold under my arms. Through the windshield, I could see the kitchen window where Mom and I had installed new trim last spring. She'd insisted on helping, proud of the home her son had built. Now her financial reputation was tangled in Barbara's web. A jogger passed by, breath clouding in the morning chill. I watched him disappear around the corner, his steady rhythm a contrast to the chaos unfolding in my hands. Every instinct screamed to confront Barbara immediately, to demand answers about my mother's involvement. But I'd learned that reaction was exactly what she wanted, emotion over evidence. Instead, I took photos of every screen, every message, every document. The camera clicks felt like ammunition being loaded. My hands moved with the same precision I used setting deck posts or checking level lines. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about protecting my mother's name alongside my own. As I documented the last screenshot, a text notification slid down from the top of Barbara's phone. Everything set for next week's application? I drove straight to Leo's office, the phone secured in an envelope marked with the date and time I'd found it. Michael Grant, the bank investigator, was already there, his glasses reflecting the glow of his laptop screen. The three of us huddled around Leo's mahogany conference table, spreading out documents like we were planning a military campaign. "Start from the beginning," Leo said, sliding a legal pad toward me. "Every account, every date." My contractor's mind kicked in, the same way I'd map out a renovation, marking load-bearing walls and plotting demolition sequences. The first unauthorized card was opened 3 months ago. Small limit, just $5,000. I pulled up the screenshots. They made minimum payments from our joint account to keep it under threshold alerts. Michael nodded, typing rapidly. Classic testing pattern. Build credit history, establish payment reliability, then go for the bigger target. In this case, the home equity line. The timeline emerged like a blueprint coming into focus. Barbara had started small, gathering points, and converting rewards to cash. Then came the credit pulls, the additional cards, the careful minimum payments, all leading up to the attempted home equity grab. And this... My voice caught as I reached the screenshots showing Mom's name. The fluorescent office lights suddenly felt too bright. She added my mother as an authorized user. Myrna Campbell's credit score is tied to this now. Leo's pen stopped moving. He knew Mom, had eaten countless holiday meals at her table, had watched her teach us both about integrity when we were kids. "Clark," he said quietly, "we'll protect her. The evidence is solid. Timestamps, GPS data, branch footage. The court will see the pattern." I pressed my palms flat against the cool table surface, steadying myself. The weight of Mom's involvement had been sitting in my chest like concrete since I'd seen her name. Speaking it aloud made it real in a way that twisted my gut. "Document everything," Michael advised, his tone professional but kind. "Bank records show the card was opened using electronic authorization from an IP address matching your home network. We'll prove your mother never consented." Over the next 3 days, I moved between job sites and documentation sessions. While crews installed windows or laid tile, I categorized evidence during lunch breaks. Screenshots went into labeled folders. Bank statements lined up in chronological order. Every receipt, every timestamp, every GPS tag found its place in the narrative. Nights were harder. The dining room table I'd built from reclaimed oak stood empty and accusing. Mom's chair, always on the left, close to the kitchen, gathered dust. The memory of Sunday dinners felt like a snapshot from someone else's life. Barbara passing plates, complimenting Mom's recipes, all while knowing she'd compromised our family's financial security. But I stayed methodical. Each document meant another brick in the wall of evidence. Each folder moved us closer to legal resolution. When I finally handed the complete packet to Leo, it was thick enough to stop a door. "Court dates are set," he said, adding the files to a secure drawer. "First hearing is in 2 weeks. You ready?" The weight of reality settled over me. No more gathering evidence. No more careful documentation. Now came the part where everything would be exposed in open court. The morning of the hearing, my truck's dashboard clock read 8:15 a.m. I adjusted my tie, the blue one Mom had given me last Christmas, and grabbed the leather binders we'd prepared. The courthouse steps felt steeper than I remembered from filing day. Leo met me at the entrance, his briefcase polished and ready. "Remember," he said, holding the heavy door, "let the evidence speak." That's what we prepared for. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fresh coffee. As we settled at our table, I heard the soft click of heels behind us. Barbara walked in with her attorney, a sharp-suited woman I'd never seen before. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, wore the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to look my way. My hands wanted to fidget with the binder tabs we'd organized so carefully, but I forced them still. The bailiff called us to order, and Judge Harrison entered, her robes rustling as she took her seat. Michael Grant testified first, his familiar stocky frame looking official in a charcoal suit. He walked the court through the electronic notary records, his voice steady as he detailed the timestamp anomalies. When he pulled up the branch security footage on the courtroom screen, showing Barbara at the bank during her alleged sister visit, I heard a small intake of breath from her side of the room. The signature authorization, Michael explained, came from the Campbell residence IP address. But Mr. Campbell was verifiably at a construction site across town, documented by multiple work orders and crew signatures. Leo stood next, presenting our timeline with surgical precision. The hotel photos, the rideshare records, the loyalty points converted to cash, the unauthorized credit cards with carefully maintained minimum payments. When he reached the part about Mom's compromised credit profile, I felt my hands trembling under the table. I pressed them flat against my thighs, watching the judge's expression remain neutral as she reviewed our documentation. "Your Honor," Leo concluded, "we've demonstrated a pattern of both adultery and financial misconduct. The defendant used Mr. Campbell's identity and assets without consent, attempting to secure fraudulent debt while engaging in documented infidelity." Barbara's attorney tried to paint it as misunderstandings and marital confusion. But against our wall of evidence, her argument sounded hollow, like excuses echoing in an empty room. Judge Harrison took exactly 12 minutes to review the final exhibits. I counted every second, my pulse drumming in my throat. "The court finds the evidence of fraud credible and corroborated," she declared, her voice filling the hushed room. "Mr. Campbell is awarded the marital home and shall be relieved of all fraudulent debts. Given the proven adultery and financial misconduct, no spousal support will be ordered." The words landed like hammer strikes. Final, decisive, real. Relief flooded through me, though a different kind of ache lingered underneath. All those years of trust, reduced to exhibits and case numbers. Leo squeezed my shoulder as we gathered our materials. Walking out, I couldn't help glancing back once. Barbara sat alone at her table, staring at her folded hands. For a moment, I wondered how far she'd fall before hitting bottom. "Ready?" Leo asked, holding the courtroom door. I nodded, turning away from the scene behind me. The morning sun through the courthouse windows felt warm on my face. 2 years can change everything and nothing at all. I'd rebuilt my contracting business stronger than before, expanding into custom cabinetry and hiring 3 new crew members. My credit score had finally climbed back above 800, and Mom's profile was clean again. The house felt different too. I'd refinished the hardwood floors myself, installed new quartz countertops, and built a reading nook by the bay window where morning light streamed in. That Tuesday evening, I was reviewing blueprints for a lakeside renovation, my coffee getting cold beside me. The knock came soft, almost hesitant. 3 gentle taps that somehow echoed through my quiet home. I wasn't expecting anyone. Most of my crew had gone home hours ago, and my suppliers usually called first. When I opened the door, the porch light caught her face, and time did that strange thing where past and present collide. Barbara stood there, hands clasped in front of her. She looked different. Thinner, maybe, with fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her brown hair was shorter, and she wore simple gold studs instead of the pearls I remembered from court. "Clark," she said, my name falling soft between us. "I miss who you were." My hand tightened on the doorframe. The wood felt solid, grounding me in the now rather than the then. I didn't speak, just watched her face in the gathering dusk. "I've thought about us," she continued, her voice carrying that familiar musical quality that once meant home. "About who we were, before. Everything." She gestured vaguely, as if 2 years of calculated betrayal could be summed up in a wave of her hand. The old kitchen table flashed through my mind, the one where I'd laid out those first damning photos. I remembered her smile when she'd asked if I could prove anything in court. The branch security footage, my mother's compromised credit. Each memory clicked into place like tumblers in a lock. "I know I hurt you," Barbara whispered, eyes glistening with what looked like rehearsed regret. "But people change. I've changed." She took a small step forward, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume, different from what she used to wear, but still trying to be familiar. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of this moment. 2 years ago, I'd been the one grasping for solid ground while she held all the cards. Now, standing in my doorway, my house, my sanctuary, I realized I held something more valuable than any power she'd ever wielded: peace. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. In her eyes, I saw the question she hadn't asked directly. Would I let her in? Would I give her another chance to rewrite our ending? The porch light cast long shadows across her face as she waited for my response. Behind me, my home stood quiet and true, every repaired wall and replaced fixture a testament to rebuilding on my own terms. My hand remained steady on the doorframe as memories continued their slow parade. The smart speaker announcing her hidden phone, the glove box discovery, Leo's steady presence through it all. Each one a reminder of why this moment felt more like an echo than an opportunity. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind me. The evening air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass from down the street, reminding me of simpler days when weekend chores meant something honest. "We should talk out here," I said quietly, maintaining a careful distance. Barbara's eyes flickered to the closed door, then back to me. "You won't invite me in?" "No." The word came easily, without anger or regret. She wrapped her arms around herself, though the evening wasn't cold. "I've been in therapy, Clark. I understand now why I did those things. The fear of commitment, the need for control. It was all about my childhood trauma." I listened, noting how her voice carried the same practiced smoothness it had when she'd told me she was working late those nights. My hands found the porch railing, fingers tracing the grain of wood I'd restored myself. "I've changed," she continued. "I'm not that person anymore. We could start fresh, build something real this time." Her eyes searched mine, seeking any crack in my resolve. "Don't you remember how good we were together?" "I remember everything, Barbara." I kept my voice level. "The hotel photos in our cloud backup, the forged signature on the equity line, your second phone in the glove box with all those messages about trading loyalty points for cash." She flinched at each detail but pressed on. "That was 2 years ago. I made terrible mistakes." "They weren't mistakes," I cut in, still calm but firm. "They were choices, calculated ones. The bank investigator proved that in court. Remember his testimony about the branch footage? About how you used my social security number while telling me you were with your sister. Clark, please. You involved my mother's credit profile." The words came out harder now, the one point that still drew real heat. "You knew exactly what you were doing, every step of the way." Tears welled in her eyes, the same performance I'd seen at our kitchen table years ago. "I hate myself for hurting you. If you'd just give me a chance to prove—" "The proof already exists," I said. "It's in a court decree under glass on my workbench. Your regret doesn't erase your choices, Barbara. It just means you're finally facing consequences you can't manipulate away." Something shifted in her expression then, a crack in the rehearsed remorse. For a moment, I glimpsed the same calculation I'd seen when she'd smirked and asked if I could prove anything in court. "So, that's it?" Her voice carried an edge now. "You won't even consider—" "No," I said simply. "I won't." She turned away slowly, shoulders tight with defeat. I watched her walk down the driveway, her shadow stretching long under the porch light. When she reached the street, she paused as if waiting for me to call out, to offer some last-minute reprieve. I didn't. The night air felt clean in my lungs as I watched her disappear around the corner. My heart beat steady and sure in my chest. The chapter was truly over, not because she'd finally admitted guilt, but because I'd finally stopped needing her to. After she disappeared into the night, I went to my truck and retrieved the new brass deadbolt I'd bought that morning. The weight of it felt right in my hands. Solid, unmistakable. I remembered installing the old lock years ago, back when I thought shared keys meant shared trust. The screwdriver felt natural against my palm as I removed the old hardware. Each turn of the screws felt like unwinding the past, stripping away layers of compromise and self-doubt. I'd built this house into a home twice now, first with hope, then with wisdom. Remember those weekend projects you start, thinking they'll take an hour? The ones that end up teaching you something deeper? This was one of those moments. The brass caught the evening light as I fitted it into place, my movements deliberate and practiced. No rushing, no second-guessing, just the quiet satisfaction of doing something right. My fingers traced the new keyhole, remembering how many times I'd questioned my own judgment during those dark months. But evidence doesn't lie. Numbers don't gaslight. Bank statements don't try to make you doubt your sanity. The mechanism slid home with a solid click that echoed through the entryway. I tested it once, twice, 3 times. The contractor in me always double-checking his work. Each turn spoke of security, of boundaries restored. Walking to my workbench, I lifted the court decree from its folder. The judge's stamp stood bold against the paper, validation in dark ink. I'd had the glass cut to size last week, another small act of permanence. The document slid in clean, no bubbles, no hesitation. Years of manipulation and deceit, reduced to official findings and final judgments. Some might call it dwelling, keeping that decree displayed. But there's a difference between holding on to hurt and remembering your worth. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about honor, about standing firm when someone tries to shake your foundation. Above my key rack, the single brass key caught the light. Just mine now. No spare hidden under rocks, no copy in someone else's pocket. I hung it on the hook with a small clink of metal on metal. The sound rang true, like a bell marking the end of a long shift. Standing back, I looked at what I'd built. The new lock gleaming in the door, the decree preserved under glass, the solitary key hanging straight and sure. 3 pieces of a life rebuilt on my terms. The room felt different now, not empty, but clean. Like the air after a storm passes. You know that moment when you realize you're finally breathing easy again? When you understand that peace isn't just the absence of chaos, but the presence of certainty? That's where I stood now. The quiet wrapped around me like a familiar coat. No more checking bank statements with dread. No more questioning timestamps on photos. No more trying to prove what should have been freely given. Trust, respect, basic human decency. I ran my hand along the workbench's edge, feeling the grain of wood I'd selected, and finished myself. Looking at the lock, the decree, and the key, I knew with bone-deep certainty. Truth isn't revenge. It's the door out.